You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast, exposing the struggles and celebrating the successes in the life of coaches who are action takers and creating authentic impact in today's world. Whether you're just starting out, expanding your reach, or exploding your impact, you're in the right place right now. Stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Now, here are your hosts of the Coach's Journey podcast.
What's up, Coaches Nation? Great to see you or hear you or whatever you want to say this morning. This is Dr. Sheri Fluellen, co-host of the Coach's Journey podcast with my co-host, Faisal Ensaun. We're excited to be here again this morning with you guys. We have been preparing for this morning, and in fact, this whole series that we're doing, this mini series on sales as a coach. So we're super excited to see where the conversation goes today. So this is step 2 or phase 2 or conversation 2. If you didn't hear the first conversation, totally encourage you to go into last week's YouTube video, podcast, Facebook video, wherever you are finding us, and go listen to that, because we covered the kind of the first step or the first piece to think about as a coach and in trying to get new clients. And that is, what clients am I even trying to get? Where might I find them? So it was really good information, really good thought-provoking conversation to help you really think about where your clients are. Today, we're going to go a little bit deeper in, now that you're reaching out, what is that conversation going to look like? What do you say? Because we all want to be genuine. We want to be able to connect with other people in a way that doesn't look like you're spamming them, that doesn't look like you're a creep, that doesn't look like you're stalking them. So how do you do this? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I know Faisal has some really good nuggets for you, as he always does. Right?
Thank you. Thank you. And so do you. Because you've been in business for a while. One of these days, I'm going to figure out the Zoom setting that just blows up and it just widens the screen on its own. One of these days.
My screen does weird stuff sometimes too. It'll when I start with Zoom, sometimes it'll be zoomed in my face, and then halfway it'll zoom out. I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, that's what just happened. It just zoomed out.
Yeah, I don't know. That's why it's called Zoom, because Zoom gets to zoom whenever it feels like it wants to zoom. That's what I think. All right.
If I knew that, I wouldn't have zoomed.
Oh, hilarious. All right. Let's talk about our wins for the week before we dive into sales as a coach. Faisal, what are some wins you've had this week?
So on the personal end, and my brother's family, they've been here this week. So yesterday I went with my nephews. Well, one of them got injured, but nephew he cut his hand. He had to actually go to the hospital, but he's fine. He just had to get stitching. But beyond that, with my nephew and nieces and my daughter, we went to the park and to the movies with them. It was a good experience. But just this whole week has been a good experience, seeing family after a while, after these lockdowns. So that's been really good. And on the professional end, I'm actually getting it. It's very interesting. This past week, I've gotten at least, and this hasn't happened in the same week in the past, 3 random people reaching out to me saying, I'm looking for a performance coach. And well, obviously they were connected to one of my prior clients that I had coached. 2 of them at least I had coached a couple of years back, and one of them recently. So then they all used performance coach as a phrase. Yeah. So either this is kind of blowing up, and at least they are in the real estate and sales space, or it's becoming a thing. I don't know. It has happened to me once a month, kind of like that, maybe once every 2 months, but in the same week, 3 people. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting because I see this in the sales space. I've definitely seen this with my husband, who is a real estate broker. And so I understand it in the real estate space because I've been in that longer than as in the coaching space. And that is when you have served enough clients, and I don't even know what that would be, but when you get to a point where you've served enough clients, you don't really need to market as much or even at all as you do at the beginning, because there starts to get this momentum going where there's, people start to hear your name, and then there's referrals and there's people coming back. And so you get to a point where it's like self-sustaining, and not that continuing to market and keep one's presence in social media isn't good or even necessary, but there's like this shift into this different type of client acquisition phase. And I know you've talked about that a little bit before, Faisal. And so I say that in encouragement to coaches, that as hard as it is to feel like you're trying to find clients and get things to land, it may not and probably will not be like that for your entire coaching career. There is a point at which I think the client acquisition and the growth and the stability of your business gets easier. Would you agree, or would you modify that slightly?
I agree that there is a momentum that builds up. However, also on top of that, I was thinking about what happened, trying to link what happened. So one of the things that I actually do is my prior clients, I actually do and keep in touch with them, just to see what happened afterwards. After they went through the coaching process, they went on to do and so this. At least one of the referrals came from a client that I had worked with 2 years ago. And he, this year I checked in with him at some point. And when we were going through the coaching process, he was in the process of wanting to get engaged, and he had a lot of blocks around it, and we worked through a lot of that stuff. And as soon as I messaged him, he sent a picture of them getting engaged. I was actually really happy to see that. And they're like, he's like, yeah, we're really excited about getting started. And then another client I reached out to just a few days ago, he was in the process of completely moving from Pennsylvania to California. That was their dream, and they had lived most of their life there. His practice was there, and like I actually coached quite a few members of his family, and I understood how difficult it was for them to make that transition. So he sent a picture of him in his new home in San Diego. I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy. I'm coming to visit. So like I do keep in touch with my clients to some degree, not just because, it's a sales thing, but I'm actually interested in what happened afterwards. How did their life turn out? And once in a while, I'll send them a message saying, hey, if I'm looking for clients, if you know anybody that's looking for them, let me know. And they usually see me. They're either in my email list or on my social media. They see what I'm doing. So those things are also running in the background, but they're not as much effort as it used to be. So that's still true that it's still based on that momentum, but it also is on the other side, has become a habit for me to stay connected. It's more of a normal part of what I do.
Yeah, I love that. And so there's this saying in sales that fortune is in the follow-up or the follow-through. Follow-up is usually where. And so it's a great reminder that, on one hand, or what is true is when we're having sales conversations and somebody says, no, not yet, they won't always say the not yet part, but that's part of our mindset, right? As a coach, is like, they say no, it just might mean not yet. We can still follow up with them and touch base with them, like, hey, how are things going? Because they may get to a point where their pain is strong enough to where they're like, yeah, now's the time. But even after you're done coaching them, after they've been your client, continuing to follow up with them, I think demonstrates that you care. I think it helps solidify the genuine connection you actually had. And, as coaches, especially as high performance coaches, I don't think I have never heard a high performance coach say, once I work with a client, they're good for the rest of their life, right? We always have challenges in life, and there's always an opportunity to take it to the next level, or to take whatever they learned and apply it in a new way, at a new level, in a new relationship, and in whatever. And so by you staying top of mind in their life every now and then, I think that helps them remember that you're there for them. It helps remind them of the progress they made with you. Might even help solidify some of those gains. And they're like, oh yeah, I remember working with Faisal. We're in San Diego now. Woo!
Yeah, no, it was really cool because I mean, and the cool thing is like when I don't know how other coaches go through this, but I develop a very deep connection with my clients in the sense that I know so much about their who they are, their emotions, how they see their vision, every aspect of their vision. So as soon as he sent me, I remembered so much of what he had shared. I'm like, I can just picture you going with your coffee, walking on the beach to that coffee place and having a conversation with the barista, and then coming back and seeing your family. Like I literally relate his vision the way he described it to me, and I had walked him through that. He's like, yeah, that's exactly what's happening. I'm like, that's really cool.
All right. So Faisal, can we do a little vision casting right now where I'm walking on a beach from my beach house, getting coffee and coming back? Because if having that conversation with you makes it reality, I want that right now.
Yes, you're gonna make it happen. That's my coaching process. That's like that scene from Transylvania. The Dracula is like trying to hypnotize it and it's not working. Why is it not working? I got contact lenses.
Oh my gosh. You are such the dad of small.
Yeah, those are the movies I watch the most.
Totally get it. In fact, I think we watched Transylvania again within the last month. So
what's even more funny is my daughter is tired of it. I'm like, we can watch Transylvania today. She's like, no. I'm like, okay, but it's so much fun.
That's funny. Oh my gosh. Okay, so let me just share a win of mine, and then we'll dive. Well, we've already started talking about the sales conversation, but we'll continue that. So for me, I had a really great conversation yesterday with a fellow investor. One of my goals right now is to deepen collaborations. And I see that I'm lagging a little bit, so hopefully my internet's not too bad. But he and I have agreed to be accountable to each other and have like accountability calls every couple of weeks so that we can track what each other is excited about, where we're headed, and making sure that we're making progress in our own goals. And so we had our first accountability meeting yesterday. It was really great. And there was a couple moments where I had an opportunity to kind of coach him a little bit and getting specific. And it was a really good conversation. We connected well, and I'm super excited to build that relationship. And because I think accountability is huge, and having somebody to be able to bounce ideas off of, and we're very similar in our mindset around some things. So yeah, that was a huge win for me. Getting to solidify.
That's huge. I think that's priceless to have somebody who can understand and who's on a similar path, and you're working kind of together to move forward.
Yes, absolutely. And he only lives, I met him in person at a conference, and he only lives an hour and a half from me. So I'll have opportunities, as we go to be able to, meet him in person and stuff every so often. So that'll be good.
No.
All right. Recognizing our sponsor for this podcast, the Coaching Mastery Community. It is a virtual community that is designed by coaches for coaches to help with encouragement, learning around becoming a coach and making coach a legit business. It helps with business mastery. It helps with the coaching mastery. We actually have an amazing challenge that we are wrapping up for the first time, and we are going to be relaunching this challenge every few months because it has been so incredibly powerful the first time. And it is around sales. It is specifically around helping the folks who have raised their hand, like sign me up for this challenge, help them really be able to get some traction and momentum in their coaching business, whether you already have clients and you just want to kick it into gear even more, or whether you're still trying to find your first client. This challenge has been incredible for the participants. And I'm going to drop a little thing for you guys to look forward to. Our sales guru in the Coaching Mastery community, his name is Anas. He just agreed this morning to be able to join us next Wednesday on this podcast. So he has a long history of working in the sales industry, in coaching, but also outside of coaching. He is full of so much information that makes it all seem simple, simple and doable, really. Doable that anybody can do it. And so I highly encourage you guys not to miss next week. It's really, really going to be good. All right. Anything you want to add, Faisal?
Yeah, and I've learned so much from Anas myself, and I'm actually excited for that conversation. And it has taken a while to get him on on the podcast, so I'm looking forward to it. And if you're listening to this, Anas, yes, I'm saying that directly to you. But yeah, I'm excited about that, and I think it'll be a good third conversation around what we're trying to do as coaches, because everything will boil down to a conversation. Even if you have some kind of complicated funnel going on that will direct people to you, either you're having a conversation or somebody on your team.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. Sales. It is such a big and seemingly overwhelming topic to think about. I don't have a great, robust business right now. I want a great, robust business as a coach. Where do I get started now that I kind of have some clarity on who I want to work with? Where would you suggest we start in this conversation?
And I wanted to recap a little bit what we talked about. Like you did the last conversation, you will only find this at this point on Facebook Live. But if you're listening to this later on, you will find it on YouTube or the podcast platform after it's edited. But what we talked about, well, where are your ideal clients? And we really dove deep in that area. Is it dove?
Dove, yeah.
dove deep in that area, and really try to figure out, well, where are your ideal clients? How can you think about that? It starts with that, because not everybody is your ideal client. So definitely listen to that if you haven't, because I don't want to go into that. But then the next step is, okay, you figured out roughly who your ideal clients are, or at least you have a general idea of, okay, these are the kind of people I want to reach out to within your network. And that's where I would start, is that, and this is something I've heard over and over in different places, that the first $1 million in sales is within your own network.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that experience in my business, is that I haven't had to actually go outside of my network. And my network has continued to expand as well because of that. So I haven't necessarily gone outside my network. Hey, let me reach out to this random person per se. I've tried doing that, but for the most part, I started with my small network, and then I just started expanding as I put myself out there. And that expansion brought in more and more people, and it continued. At some point, it creates kind of a snowball effect that people generally know you in certain spaces. Like, I'm pretty well known now in the multifamily space because I'm connected to different communities. So I've coached somebody or multiple people within there, and what ends up happening, the way I hear it, is that, oh, you came up in a conversation in a meetup, or I heard about you in my mastermind. I heard about you work with this person in this community, and this is what happens. And but like, it's easy to look at it that way, but it's a lot of work leading up to that, and that's where the whole sales is. So where do we start?
I think you already did.
I did. Okay, maybe.
So let me take what you just said and put it in a different frame of or different context.
Yeah, that's why I need you, Sheri.
So when we think about sales, this is how sometimes I get freaked out about sales. When I think about sales, I think about going up to a random stranger or contacting a random stranger and trying to introduce myself, trying to convince them that I am somebody that they should listen to, pay attention to, I can be helpful in some way, form, or fashion. And it just freaks me out. Like, if I let myself go there, that's where my brain goes. And while sometimes that could be what you do, that's called cold. Those are cold leads. So I just kind of want to use a little bit of lingo here and kind of what Faisal was saying. That's a cold lead, what I just described to you. Somebody that doesn't know you, doesn't trust you, they don't know you from Adam. What Faisal is talking about is starting with your sphere of influence, or what we also call warm leads, people that already have some sort of sense of you. Now, the imagery that came to mind, and bear with me because it's not usually the image that we think of as good. You know how they say a bad apple spoils the bunch? Well, what if the bad apple, I mean, maybe this might totally land wrong, but what I hear Faisal is saying is that he got to know people, and then by proximity to the people he's helped, they got to know him. So it's like one of his clients was bad apple thrown into the thing, and because they were around that apple, all of a sudden they're like getting to understand and know Faisal. But it's not a bad thing. Like
I got what you said. So what you saying that my clients are not bad apples. They just influence the rest of the people around them with their growth.
Exactly.
I got what you said.
Exactly. Thank you for taking that. And yeah, that's why we need each other, right? And so the more conversations you have with the people you already know, and the more you're able to facilitate help and change in their lives, that's kind of where that the flywheel growth starts to come, is they're starting to share kind of their experience with you. And it could even be super small things that kind of help launch your reputation as being good at what you do.
Yeah, and there's and this was one of the last things I wanted to talk about in the last conversation, but I realized that that we were about to finish the conversation, but I think it's a good starting point. We talked a little bit about like reaching out to people on social media and other things, your ideal clients, but and I always wondered about this. So, for example, this was taught to me by Brendan Burchard, who trained me in this area from Expert Academy to certified coach and all that stuff. And it was interesting because one of the things he encouraged us to do is put yourself out there. But what I got out of it is my assumption was that if I put myself out there, I'll get more clients. But then after years of doing that, I realized that wasn't the purpose. The purpose was more about owning the identity around being a coach. The purpose was more because what I've found over and over is that the hardest thing for coaches to do is actually acknowledge that they own the identity that, okay, I'm the coach. I do this. This is what's important to me, and I can help people with that. And actually putting yourself out there with that, whether it's within conversations with people or social media, that is a huge, scary thing for coaches. That's one of the hardest things to get over. And once you do, then it becomes just about consistency. Yeah. And that doesn't necessarily give you clients. It can. But what I have experienced is that gave me the courage to put myself out there more. That refined my message, helped me refine my message, because I'm constantly talking about what I'm teaching or the questions that I'm asking or the people that I'm talking to. And three, so there's credibility, refining the message, and it also it gave people this sense that I'm sincere about this. This is what I do. Yeah. And so like even within sales conversations, like what I'll say is like, I didn't just start this yesterday. I can say that because I've been doing this. I've been putting out content. I could have still said that a year after or a few months after, that this is an important thing for me. And that matters to clients, because what they will do is they will Google you. You can be sure of that. I will Google people.
So I've had a number of conversations with coaches about how they talk about themselves in their circle. And one of the things I've noticed can be a little bit of a barrier or a little bit of a block, a hurdle, however you want to label it, is really developing that, like you said, that ownership around your identity as a coach. And when you were talking about that, Faisal, one specific conversation came to mind that I had with a gal that she's trying to work on building up her coaching, but she also is a very successful in her own right outside of the coaching sphere in another industry. And what she's trying to do is she's trying to reduce her work in that other industry, but harness her reputation as a coach and be able to coach back to that industry. And so one of the things she was really struggling with was letting people know she was a coach in that industry, because she was fearful that if I say I'm a coach, people and potential clients, not necessarily coaching clients, but clients that the other type of clients that she would get, might think that she's distracted, that she can't really fulfill on their needs because she's doing this side hustle thing. And so she was keeping quiet about the coaching. And she was able to get this epiphany by rethinking about how those two things interacted. And once she was able to get her mind wrapped around that her ability to coach is specifically because she's so good in this industry. And if she shared that with clients, like, hey, maybe not in this exact way, but I've become so successful that I now am a mentor and coach to other people to help them become successful in this industry. Once she realized and got language around how that coaching gig could actually help her in that main industry, that completely changed her confidence in having those conversations. And so understanding and really settling on owning that identity as a coach and how that impacts you and what that means, and having that story and the framework around it, I think is so critically important. I went through my own little block in trying to figure out how I was going to talk about myself as a coach, and what is that going to say, and how do I explain my transition, and so I had to kind of figure that out in my own brain before I then had the confidence to be able to go on video or whatever and say, hey, this is what I do, and not have it somehow come across like I was embarrassed a little bit or shy about it or not confident, because confidence naturally leads to people thinking you're competent. Like, I think those two things are pretty tied together. Now, obviously somebody could be confident and totally suck in whatever they're doing, but the image that we're portraying is, if we have confidence, people are much more likely to take you as competent. And so really having language and understanding your story around yourself as a coach, I think is really foundational for your ability to come across well in, as you're trying to develop clients. Wow, that was probably more long-winded than I usually am.
That's good. I love that you're long-winded.
Breather. What do you have to add to that, Faisal?
First of all, I love what you said, because I think it's very powerful. And also, we've had a longer conversation about this on another podcast around owning your identity as a coach. So it's and this is where you can see that all these things are so connected. You can't, you don't just show up and have a sales conversation. There are a lot, and it's the analogy that some of my clients gave me who are in the real estate space that are really good at that. The visual of it is that if you drive by a construction area, you watch there's construction going on, but there's not much happening. And then after a few months, you go there, all of a sudden there's a huge building built. What happened is most of the work is on the foundational area.
Yeah.
And much of our work is actually very foundational. So we need to get coached around this stuff. And the way that the gal that you're referring to, which I can probably guess who that is, but I will not mention who that is. But that's a common challenge, especially with people who come. I had that challenge transitioning from an engineering field to this, but now you're also talking about coaches who are doing multiple things. How do they align those identities?
Yeah.
Definitely listen to that conversation, because that's helpful. So the important thing there is, why would we even be embarrassed of something like coaching? Why would we be embarrassed of owning up the identity? Why would we think something like, oh, I'm distracted? Like these are all thoughts and values that are floating around out in the ether of collective consciousness, and we pick it up, confusing that this is us. And this is why we need coaching. This is why coaches need coaching to see their blind spots, see that they are getting confused with other people's values and thought processes and collective ways of looking at things that might not fully serve them.
Yeah.
And that's why one of the reasons why we focus in our community is that a coach needs to get coached. So that's an integral part of what we do. And also what it reminded me of in a practical sense, is part of high performance coaching too, or at the loose part of high performance coaching, and a general part of coaching to connect with clients. But one of the things that helped me own the identity is share my story more and more as to why I became a coach.
Yeah.
And I do that literally every strategy session. I do that when somebody's asking me, as scary as it can be for me a lot of times, even after years of saying it, there's a part of me that reacts to it, that, okay, why am I telling this story? But I say it anyway. I say it, and most of the time the reaction is like, oh, thank you for sharing that. I really value that you're in this. And why am I in this? Because I struggled through this stuff, and this is what helped me. That's why I'm paying this forward. That's why I'm giving this back. And it's the same for the coach that you talked about. She got something out of this.
Absolutely.
She got something very important out of this. So why wouldn't she give it back? If you ate something really tasty, what do? It's like, you got to go to that restaurant.
Right?
You got to eat this. You got to try this. We don't stop. But when it comes to something we're offering, and it involves, like we've talked about this before, and then one of the other conversation, money, then all of a sudden things start to break down. But there's no difference.
Yeah, I think it's really, a way of thinking about it is you can be your own and first testimonial around coaching. And you don't even have, it's not like, hey, I changed amazingly because of my own coaching, because we can't really see our own blind spots. That's why they're called blind spots. But for the process of coaching, for, helping people understand the value of the discipline and of the time and energy that goes to it in general, absolutely be your own first testimony. Share your story, share about, one or two things that completely were game changers for you, and being able to, have more joy, connect more with your kids, have a deeper relationship with your husband, love yourself more. I mean, the list goes on, and the millions of things that change in life because of taking time, energy, and effort to intentionally examine your life in the areas that you want to grow or that you don't. And especially, I think one of the cool things about coaching that we can share with potential clients is, we sign up for coaching because we want XYZ. And then we come out of coaching realizing we also got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Like we get all these changes that we didn't realize were part of coaching or that could be a result of coaching. So I think that's a cool thing to share too, and can be part of your story. Like, hey, this is, as I've gone through coaching, this is what I experienced. And also these other things, which I totally didn't know was going to happen, but it's amazing.
Yeah, completely agreed. And I want to get a little bit more strategic in the sense that, okay, now you get that, you've owned your identity, you know who you're reaching out to. What do the activities look like in your day-to-day life for you to build those potential client list?
Yeah.
In a sense, how would you look for that? And then I can share some examples of what I do, and Dr. Sheri, you can too. So I don't just go walk up to somebody on the street and say, hey, I'm a coach, would you like to work with me? That'd be a little bit creepy, in my mind at least. So generally speaking, I'm part of different communities. How did I get into them? It started with what we talked about, putting myself out there. So people know already that this is what I do. And then I'm part of certain communities, such as, let's say I'm part of a certified coaching group. I'm part of a multifamily meetup thing. I'm part of another group. So multiple groups I'm part of. So then how do I, first of all, one of the most important things, realizations, it's so simple, but I didn't notice that the first 2 years of my coaching, was that I didn't, like, I was part of all these groups, but I didn't really pay attention to it. I was always in my head, I'm like, I need to put out the next thing and the next thing. But then at some point I'm like, you know what? I need to connect with people. And so I started paying attention to conversations within those, the discussions within there. And wherever I could add value, I would. And then within, as I started paying attention to it, there were usually, every once in a while, there were requests. Hey, I'm struggling with this thing. Can you help me? I'm looking for this thing. Can you help me? Then I would reach out to them. Generally, if I could help them in that thread, I would. Then if I can, then I would reach out to them. I'll be like, hey, message me, reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with you. And then I would get into these conversations. And one of those conversations, mind you, gave me one of my biggest contracts in my coaching career. Is somebody just put a discussion, hey, I'm looking, I'm struggling with keeping up with this, that, and the other. Can you help me? I didn't even know what it was. That ended up being an interview for me to collaborate with somebody. And that happened, and that gave me a great contract, and that's connected to it's to Coaching Master Community. But that's not an uncommon thing. It happens all the time. Even now, to this day, I don't actually need a lot of clients to work with me one-on-one, but I'm in threads. If you see me in communities, I'm like, hey, this is what I've tried. If you want, if you want to explore this further, here's my calendar link. I will even share my calendar. I've gotten better at organizing my calendar, so I'll share a calendar.
Good for you.
Almost every week, every other week, somebody has booked a quick conversation. It would be 30 minutes. Or at minimum, I put it for 30 minutes, but that's up to you. And then within that conversation, I find out what are they trying to do, and I look for ways that I can support them on. That could be a collaboration thing. That could be them working with me. That could be me sending them to my podcast. It could be anything, but I'm constantly in conversations with people, and this is what my sales world looks like. It's not very complicated.
I love that. You're talking about providing value, being willing to show your cards a little bit, and say, hey, I can help you a little bit with this. I can help answer a question. I can help resolve this pain point for you. And you're not necessarily demanding that they give you $10,000, $20,000 up front to get a little bit of help. You're okay. I'm debating in my mind whether I use this analogy. So I'm just going to do it. It's like you're giving them a little bit of drugs. You're giving them a little bit of drugs, getting them hooked on.
Wow, Sheri, your dark side is coming up today. Bad apples, drugs.
Right? In no form or fashion am I condoning drug use. 100% no. But it's the idea that you're giving them a little bit of something that they're looking for. It's giving them a quick shot of like, ooh, yes, that's what I needed. And so then they're like, well, where did I get that? I got it from Faisal. So let me go back to him to see if he's got more of the good stuff.
And again, in this is very, it sounds simple, but a lot of people won't do that. And you have to decide. So if I'm looking at my week, if, like, for example, last week, so I color code this stuff, and this is something I actually learned from Rich Litvin, where he said that he has 2 color codes. I have multiple color codes, but he had 2. There are blue block times, and there are red ones. The blues are his recurring clients that he's already signed up. Red ones are conversations that could lead to him getting clients. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, that's actually really smart. So for me, anything that's coded in green, that's money. That's my minor. I don't look at my clients as numbers and money. That's not what I'm saying. But in my mind, it's a quick way for me to see that. So I'm looking at, let's see, just last week. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 hours of sales conversations. They're either intro conversations to like coffee conversations or intro conversations that would lead to a collaboration or sales, or something else. Now that's not what happens every week. For example, this week is a little bit different. I'm off most of the week because my family's here. But on average, you will see at least one or two conversations that will be on a block. And instead of kind of tracking it in a way where I'm going to look back and see it, this is a simpler way for me to have. I need to see at least one or two green conversations per week, if not more.
Yeah.
That helps me gauge, okay, am I even doing anything in the sales area? But then there are also block areas for prospecting. Like, what am I doing to increase that if I need to? And then also there are different effort levels. So it doesn't take much to go into a group and look for, like, it will take like 20, 30 minutes, maybe 15 minutes to look for some conversations where you can add value within a group, within social media, somewhere. That's great. But then there are other ways to have more of an impact and effort. And one of the examples I've shared in the past is, like, I joined a book club, and every week my commitment is to show up for 1 hour for no reason other than, like, I love the conversations, but I just want to add value, whatever I've learned from the book and all that stuff. That, like, very consistently translated to at least one client a month just from that book club. Like, at least one or two clients a month that I would have a few conversations that would translate to, and we'll talk about the exact conversations in the next session on the strategy sessions. And then there are other things where I would go out there and do like a training, or I'll do like a webinar or a coaching for another organization, and I'll offer something. And a lot of times, if it's on Zoom, I'll take a screenshot. I don't just wait for them to reach out to me. This was my mistake early on. I notice people, I have a mental note, I take a screenshot, and then I reach out to the people that are really connected. I'll start with those because those are, I connected with them, I established rapport, they got something out of it, they asked questions. And then I reach out to them, hey, I'd love to get some feedback around you. This was actually from Anas. I'd love to get some feedback, which I actually need for my training. But I'd also love to explore if we can work together or collaborate, or this could be something for you to explore coaching specifically. So I'm clear about what I'm saying, but I'm actively reaching out to people. In the past, what I would do is do the same exact thing, and then I'll wait. Yep. People are going to reach out to me. Not happening, because people are busy. They will forget in the next 2 hours after they've had a problem at home or in their business.
So you just in what you shared that you do, it just actually gave me an idea of something that I haven't been doing that I can do super easy. But first of all, one of the things that I've noticed, just to kind of piggyback off what you're saying, is I do a lot on social media, specifically on Facebook. I love doing videos. Scared to death when I first started doing them. The idea of turning my camera on live and, whatever I accidentally say or do or whatever that is, I didn't intend to do, freaked the crap out of me. But I felt, I'm like, I need to get over this. And I got over it pretty quickly. And now I love doing Facebook Lives. And I get a lot of attention on them. I have people commenting on them all the time. When they see me out in public or whatever, they always comment, I watch your videos, either so helpful or informational or whatever. So I do a lot of that. And I've noticed that, so the thought that came to me, Faisal, is that I could go back to my videos and look at who has watched all of them or has commented on them, share them, like them, and reach out to them. Because if they're actually paying attention to my videos, obviously that means they like the content, which is usually around both coaching mindset, but also around real estate investing. I should be reaching out to them because that's like their way of raising their hand saying, hey, I'm a potential warm lead. So I've totally been missing the boat on that. I'm going to start doing that.
Yeah, that's important. So I actually I don't have a large following, and like, this is something I had to reframe my mind, because I learned from people who have very large followings. Like, they have millions of people following them. They could not do this. But people who are starting out or who are at my level or in the first few years of their coaching career, you don't you're not doing a lot of things. As much as it might seem, like the most important things will be, one of the most important thing is keeping track of who is interacting with you on social media, one-on-one, in groups, and really following up with them. It doesn't take much. So I don't have a lot of followers. I'll be upfront with that. But that's a good thing. I can leverage that, because somebody watching my video and I see the same person liking, or they're sharing, or you can track all this stuff through, if you're on Facebook at least. I know that you can do that. Or they're messaging me, or any kind of interaction. This is a warm lead already. So either you can work with them or they can refer you to somebody else. So it can be as simple as, hey, I love that you're interacting with my posts. I'd love to get your feedback. What has been your greatest insight, or something like that. And I'm also looking for 5 new clients to work with. I'd love to get on a strategy call with you or somebody that you might know. Please let me know, or you can share a link. It sounds very odd, but it's like we kind of go all in roundabout ways to get clients, but it's a very direct way of asking, hey, I see you getting something out of it. You can get more out of this, or somebody you know could get more out of this.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I've noticed with myself is that, you were talking about commenting in Facebook groups and providing value. There's one, it boggles my mind, because this wasn't my intent. But it's kind of one of those things that it's just happened. And I kind of look back, I'm like, wow, that was a good accidental strategy. Was so prior to coaching, I had a brick and mortar psychology practice that I started and ran for about 10 years. Through that process, I bought 3 buildings for the practice as it continued to grow. And I used an SBA backed loan for 4 buildings. 2 of the 4 buildings, I used an SBA loan. Huge advocate if somebody has a brick and mortar business, or any way that they can justify buying real estate to support their business. There's a lot of support out there that's even more valuable than just buying something up straight up as an investment property. And so in some of the Facebook groups I'm a part of, that are specific to what they call practice owners, psychology practice owners, I had posted a few times, and there's a lot of questions about real estate and how big do I buy? How big should the rooms be for having a counseling session, and all these different things. So because I had enough experience in it, I was constantly like, hey, this was what I did, and this was really cool. And I've gotten more people to reach out to me like 3 years later. Like my last post was probably 3 years ago, specific around buying a building using SBA loan. And I still have people reach out to me now, because it is such, think about it, it's such a niche question that they are clearly searching, through the search function in the group. They're searching for everybody that has ever said anything about SBA loans. And they find my huge expanse of post and the things that I've said, I've done this and successfully. And so they reach out to me, like, hey, could you help me, or answer this question or whatever. So I use that just as an example that, if you can get super, super specific and concrete on maybe some things you've done, or a way that you've been able to help somebody, if it's specific enough, people might even be searching for those keywords years later, and you can still get people kind of commenting and reaching out to you for help and support in, whatever it is that you were commenting on.
Yeah, I love that. And that's exactly what it is and this is where, like, it all, like, we're talking about the strategies around it there are hundreds of other ways of what we're doing. Like what we just shared a few things, but there are hundreds of other variations of what you could creatively do based on your experience, based on the communities and the groups and the environments you're connected to. But the key is putting yourself out there, trying to help, be in conversations, asking people what they're struggling with, supporting them in whatever you want, sharing what your vision is, sharing what you're trying to do. Like, this is what human connections are. the only way that people will help you get to your goals is if you actually they know what you're trying to do. If they have no idea what you're doing, it's all in your heart, closed up in a little box, they're never going to give you what you want, and you will get more and more and more frustrated. I know, because I was there. I did that for 2 years. It does not work. It does not work. And it's not just me. I've seen a lot of coaches who have sat on it for 6 months, 1 year, or 5 years. I still have coaches who was certified exactly at the same time, who have just similar skill sets as me to a lot of degrees, who can coach people at a similar level as me, but they're still sitting and waiting.
Mhm.
And they will be waiting for another 5 years if they continue on like that. And then at some point they will give up on it because they're not seeing any return on it. And nothing is going to move forward until we actually get involved. And I want to address the other side of it. Some people might be actually better in person than they are online. So you don't need to be stuck with the complicated world of online. I don't like complicated online. I just like messaging people. I just like talking to people. And even if you're like Dr. Sheri was talking about doing Facebook Live, if you don't like Facebook Live, start with your blogs. We've had guests come in, they just help people with blogs.
Yeah.
They don't even need to see you a lot of times. It's better, objectively speaking, people connect better on video and live and stuff, but that's not mandatory. That's one part of it. Is so however feels aligned with you to put yourself out there, whether it's blog, it's video, Facebook Live, or whatever, or we have coaches who are going and getting involved in their local, what do we call them, BNIs and
Networking groups.
networking groups, meetups. They're much better in that space, and they just text somebody, or they message them that this is the thing that I'm doing. It doesn't have to, because a lot of times, like, well, I don't know internet. I don't know how social media works very well. And even for me, like, I've been in this space, it changes so fast that I can't keep up with all this shit. I don't even know how TikTok works. I go on it, I get a headache, I leave. I don't know how Twitter works. I have an account. I literally, when I go there, I'm like, I can't figure this shit out. I have too many things to do. I move away from it. And then I hear coaches talk about, like, oh, I've been able to generate this and that. I'm like, good for you. I'm not going anywhere near that.
Right? Pick your battles.
Pick your battles. Look at what you love. Look at what excites you, how you want to connect. At the end of the day, what we're talking about is the most basic human value. You need to connect with people. People need to know what you're trying to do. You need to help people, add value, so your network can expand.
Yeah.
And as it expands, you have a larger pool of potential clients. And then your activity on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis needs to be, are you actually consciously creating these networks, adding value to these networks? Are you reaching out to people, or are you just waiting for people to reach out to you?
Yes. So as you were talking, so the Coaching Mastery community, one of the things that we have for our members is we've got a WhatsApp group, and we, encourage each other and share stories and, like, hey, this just happened, or isn't this funny? And if somebody's, and so as you were talking, Faisal, I was just reminded that, this whole process requires a lot of courage from us as coaches, because when we put ourselves out there, when we try to reach out, when we're trying to be proactive and not just passively waiting for people to come to us, if they're passively coming to us, that feels good. It's not risky. We're not putting ourselves out there. We're not having to be vulnerable. But when we reach out, it really requires a lot of vulnerability on our part. Anyway, and so that's kind of what I was thinking. And it reminded me that just this morning, our sales guy, I call him sales guy, but he's a fantastic coach. His name is Anas. He's the one that's going to be with us next week. He sent
I don't think he'll mind you calling him a sales guy. I think he'll be proud of that.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. He sent a screenshot this morning. Here's the screenshot on our WhatsApp. And it was a screenshot of he had reached out to somebody, and they responded back and they said, right now, it's not the right timing for me, but I appreciate your reach out. And so he was saying that this is just a good reminder, that you're gonna get no's, you're gonna get not nows, and I just bring that up because being part of a community where when you get that no, you're able to like normalize it, you're able to get that feedback from other people, like this is part of the process. Whereas I know when I get in my own head and get a quote unquote rejection, like it's easy for me to take it personal, like I'm a horrible coach, I can't do this is never gonna work, all of the negative things that I could let myself think about if I let myself think about it. But being in a community where you're being supported, encouraged, you're being challenged in some of those negative thought patterns that aren't really helping, can be so valuable. So I love that he shared the rejection because that's just part of the journey.
Yeah, I love that, and that's exactly how. And I've shared this before, that as if you're somebody who's coming into this world of entrepreneurship and you don't have the experience around business, or this kind of business, then you won't have a frame of reference. You will go talk to somebody or a couple of people and you'll think, oh, I'm doing something wrong, but that's not how it actually works. So then I'll give a comparison between let's say you opened up a pizza shop versus a coaching business. They're both the same. They're both businesses. Here's the difference. A pizza shop is well known. People know what it is. So and you still have to market and advertise, obviously, but people will generally be attracted that by the fact that they know the experience, they know everything about it. They will walk in, you'll have things. So even if you come from a business like that, you won't actually know what the coaching world is like. Some can, but now you come into the coaching world, nobody can physically and tangibly see. You don't, generally speaking, you're an online coach. You don't have an office like a therapist or somebody like that. It's not well known. People don't know what coaching is, what the experience is. Whatever, most of what they think is just not true about coaching. They might think it's about advice giving or mentoring or a version of therapy, whatever. They have no idea. And that's why when I have the initial conversation, some of my first initial question, have you gone through coaching before? What kind? And they will say, some of them will say, yes, I've gone through this. I'm like, what did that look like? What was the process like? And what I almost always reach to, what they say is that, oh, it's just somebody giving me advice about this thing. Oh, okay, that's what you're calling coaching. I'm like, and then that helps me clarify what have they gone through, because coaching is an experience that they haven't had yet. If somebody has gone through it, then that makes the process much easier. Yeah. So having said that, one of the hardest things for me to create a reference around this is, so I would go out there and do a webinar, or I would reach out to somebody, have a conversation, and the first few would naturally be no. In my mind is, I got rejected, it's a no, not what Sheri said, no yet. And I would just be dealing with my emotions around it. It made it a personal thing. But here's how it naturally works. When you're starting out, your conversion rate is going to be very low. You're going to start with a very low baseline number. And a good assumption is 1 in 10. You're going to get, out of 10 conversations, you'll probably get one client. So now look at how messed up this is. I will have one conversation. I'll feel the effect of it because I felt discouraged and I don't have anybody to talk to. So I'm in my head for the next month. And then I'll get myself out of that rut somehow and then reach out to the next person. I'll have another conversation and like, no. So now imagine I have one conversation per month for the next 10 months, how painful that is. Most of them are rejection. The 10th one will be the client, but by then I'm so beat down that I don't even know what's happening. And
you probably discounted your program by then because you have felt like, well, yes. So now you've gone 10 months and now, maybe you're like, it's $3,000. Okay, you just made $3,000.
Just take it. Just I'll do this for free.
Right? I'll pay you for the experience.
And that's what it felt like a lot of times. Like I would talk to my family and I'm like, this will help you, or friends. It's like, just pay me whatever you can afford, but this will help you. And I had such a conviction around it. So I would get some people here and there. But here's the thing. Here's how I here's the contrast. On an average, right now I'm waiting on 6 clients to reach out to respond, to finalize the conversation, like whether they signed up or not. So in the next, so just yesterday, I reached out to two of them, reminded them, hey, either our conversation is coming up to finalize this, or just a reminder, take a look at that. If you had any questions or anything, let me know. So in the next couple of weeks, I'll be reaching out to them consistently until I get an answer. So the answer is either, hey, I have some questions around it, concerns, let's get on a call. I usually have a follow-up call booked. If I don't, then I'm answering the question. If I've already answered their question, or they say, hey, I'm not in that place yet. And if I really need a client, what I would do if I were, now I don't do that as much, but what I would do is, hey, loved having a conversation with you. I'd love to connect with anybody in your network who's looking for something like this here. Please share this link with them. And I will send them some resources around that. So out of these 6 conversations, I'll probably get, at this point with my conversion rate, maybe at least 4 of them will be at some version of my program, either a low tier program or a group coaching level. Some of them will join me. Some of them won't. I'll still add value. I'll still continue those conversations. They're not a no, like Dr. Sheri said, they're not yes yet, or not yes right now, in a sense. So it's such a different frame. I didn't take anything personally in this process. I'm reaching out to enough people, and based on my conversion rate, and I'm consistently trying to improve that conversion rate. So I understand that. But in the past, I had no reference around that. I needed a community to be around where people are trying the same things and they're getting different levels of results out of it, and they're improving on their skill sets as they move forward. Such a simple thing, but I struggled deeply around this.
Yeah. I appreciate your openness around this, Faisal, and I love that you're a great example of just the growth and progress that can happen just by doing it, and really working hard at your personal growth around the professional growth at the same time. The two are very intertwined. You stay stuck in your personal inner world, that's going to come out in your professional world. So both need love and attention.
Yes, definitely.
All right, so
before we end, one last thing. It'll be simple. It won't be drawn out.
4,
3, 2. So one of the things that has helped me, and this will happen over time, part of it is organizing your thoughts and emotions, not taking things personally, getting coaching on that. And part of it is your external world of what's happening. Organizing your life and business makes a huge difference. So if you're, for example, in the past, I would just if somebody wanted to, I would reach out to them. Hey, can you do this time? Can you do that? It will be a lot of back and forth. Now what it looks like, hey, somebody reached out to me last night. I know where my link is for my calendar for 30 minutes. Oh, the chat, this person referred me to you. I want a high performance coach. I'm like, oh, I'd love to get to know what you're trying to do to see for the right fit. Please click on this link. I just want to have a quick conversation, and then we'll take it from there. But it was like, that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't done the work to set up I don't need to look at my calendar, nothing. I just share the link. My calendar is already set up. They'll probably book something by early Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, and I have a conversation. So if I'm not organized, what that will look like is back and forth, and we might find a time, but you're consuming a lot of your time like that, much less efficient. This will come in time, but the sooner you work on it, the better it is. That's just on the logistical setup.
Perfect. Stuff. Love that advice for us all. All right. So I trust that those of you that are listening to this or watching this, whether it's live or whether it's on the replay, that there were at least a couple things out of this conversation that sparked an aha, that were like, ooh, yeah, I need to try that. Or, yes, that's where I'm stuck. And I really need to figure out how to move past that. I even had an epiphany, I'm like, ooh, here's a new thing I can do. Yeah, absolutely. So I trust that you got something out of it. And we are all about, don't just have an epiphany and then hide it under the rug or forget about it or accidentally throw it away in the trash. You got to act on it. So write it down, document it somehow, commit to doing it, to doing the new thing, or figuring out, how to shift the mindset, if that's what that epiphany was about. Commit to it. Don't forget about it. Let's get it done. We want to see your guys' coaching journeys excel so that you can have an even bigger impact next week, next month, and next year.
Yeah. I love that. And then I really encourage you, if you're on this journey, to definitely listen to the rest of the conversation, because all these conversations, we're picking them and strategically deal with your skill sets. They deal with the business side of things. The more aware you are of these conversations, the more aware of like these things come not just because we conceptually know this. This comes from a lot of experience, not just ours, but within our community of other coaches that we've interacted with within other communities. So we're sharing very important content. And the more and the reason why I even wanted to do this, because I wanted to deliver this, because these are things I wanted to know as I was growing as a coach. And I'd love for people to not go through some of the pain that I went through. Like, I learned through them, and you can learn from the process that we went through. Some of them you can't avoid, but many of the things you can learn from our experience. And also, if you don't have a community, if you're not consistently connected with other coaches, you definitely need that. And part of our community is to make sure we have a frame of reference with other coaches. We're learning and growing together. We're sharing our rejections, like Dr. Sheri shared, our wins and all sorts of stuff. But we're also getting coaching within the process. We're also dealing with our blind spots and blocks. So please join us at coachingmastercommunity.com. You can find our podcast and one landing page, all of this stuff at thecoachesjourney.com. And make sure you like and share this video or post or wherever you're listening to this.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for spending time with us. We have enjoyed this conversation. We look forward to our next conversation, and I hope you have a fantastic week.
Bye.
Bye.
You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast.